Sure. Have a drink. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming, and whoever may or may not be out there in the digital world. About 6 months ago, we, and I think when I say we, might have been I, but had a kind of crazy idea to, how do we put this? I say take over the world, I think is what it was, the Revit world, and not really take over because, you know, there's a lot of awesome groups out there and a lot of awesome Revit users. But, you know, I feel that LA is a hub of architecture, is one of the main hubs. And I've always thought that we should have much more of a presence. And so a few years ago when I started running the LA Revit user group, I kind of co-opted this group in, and their names are up on here, and a handful of us are here tonight. And really, we all kind of shared the same vision. They were really good people to bounce ideas off of, and I've actually started to make them do stuff. And this is one of the first things that we're doing as a group, and we really wanted to spread. We think we have really good meetings in Los Angeles, so we wanted to bring that to the greater Los Angeles and even more largely to California. You see, we're going to be doing meetings in San Francisco. So that was really the impetus for this. And I guess today, we introduced them yesterday, and it went out live. But for you guys here, we won't, everybody's working right now, so we're not going to have everybody come up unless you want to. You want to come up? No, you don't need to? Okay, but tonight we have Joe Mendez over there, so for everybody who's here, there's Joe Mendez. He's awesome from R2KL. Their visualization guru. He's into all sorts of different applications. I mean, from Revit to just everything that's cool. Yeah, everything that's cool, all the stuff that's cool. That's what Joe does. We have Elisa de Dios, of course, of God. You know, so I don't know what more we could say about that. I mean, when your name's God, you know, that's pretty much it. So she is the Revit goddess extraordinaire. So, and then we have Troy Gates, who you guys know from being around here down in Orange County, Revit community. Troy is quite a figurehead. And as Brian said, I'm Jay Zallan. You may have seen me present here before, but if not, I'm usually the loud guy in Los Angeles that is interrupting people when they pretty much do anything. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about several topics. What I'm going to be talking about are project browser organizations, because I think that is really essential to Revit. And but one of the things that we don't have the mouse, so yeah, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, the thing we're going to talk about browser organizations right here. I'm going to talk about BIMing, or do you just BIM, right? There's always that argument. But BIM with integrity. And does this have anything to do with browser organizations? Well, in my mind, yes. It also has to do with everything else that we do, not just in life, but specifically in BIM. And what I really mean to talk about in the BIM with integrity is quite often in the traditional workflows from hand drafting, probably when they were drawn, you know, in the dirt with sticks, people were in their silos. You give somebody a task to do, they would go draw that in whatever method, and they were in their silo, and then they would give it back to you, print it, you redline it back and forth and back and forth. Not that that doesn't happen now, but there is so much more power with softwares like Revit and all of the BIM platforms that it takes a personal real investment, right? And if you go into it with the same mindset of I just need to do my job and I don't care what anybody else is doing, you're really going to make some major errors and really throw wrenches into it. So I want to give you guys, and in fact this is special for you. I didn't do this in LA last night. Actually, they've probably seen this. But if Big Bad BIM, if you're watching, in 3, 2, 1 is where I'm going with this. We need to have a bit of transformation. We need to take ownership of our work at every level. Every button click needs to be intentional. And I have a kind of a Revitism or a demandment or whatever you want to call it where sometimes in order to speed up, you have to slow down, right? And that's a different methodology. There's all, you know, Revit takes a different mindset. So what I want to do is kind of give you a little bit of what it takes to have a different mindset. And the transformation, which is what I'm talking about, a change of perspective of how you're looking at things in life, really. But those changes do not happen over time. They are not slow processes where you have to learn and continue. No, a change in your perspective can happen immediately. Okay, and I'm going to give you a little example of how. So right now, I look a certain way to you, and in our minds, we're all human. We're, you know, Jay looks like this. We're just judgment machines, which is fine. That's what we are as people. We make assumptions or judgments about what things are. Is that good for me? Is it bad? Was that a truck, or was that a lion about to eat me? You know, it's just our instincts. I say don't trust your beliefs, because your beliefs can change and should change in a moment. And choosing to work with integrity can be a change that happens in a moment. So what I'm getting at is whatever you think of me right now, there's going to be a change in this room. Okay? Ready? So the change is, whatever you thought of me a second ago is now probably not what you're thinking about me right now. Right? Different look. Is he now he's not this kind of professional casual dresser? No. Is he a biker? What's going on, right? Those changes in your perspective happen in a moment, and it's all about how we choose to change our outlook. And that's what we need to do to get to win with integrity. Now, I won't stay like this, because even though it's comfortable. But that's what I'm talking about. We got to change our mindset, and then we can approach being successful at Revit. Troy? So you can go over. Thank you. We obviously need to develop some, methodologies and standards, and again, that mindset. And the one warning I want to give you is that if you actually have organized projects, you might find that there is success in your BIM. And the more organized you can be, the more success. So be warned. You might find success by doing this. So we're going to talk about organizing views, organizing sheets tonight. We're not going to talk about organizing families, but for instance, every template that I do, all the tags are rebuilt every year, because Revit under the hood is doing differences in programming. So you should not be just saving all your tags. I know it's a pain, but that's part of what BIM managers and directors and such do. Every year, you rebuild the templates. You do not save them as, because they blow up. Tools will not work in those versions, certain tools. So I'm not going to talk about families, but you want to organize those as well. And really what we're talking about is organizing these large, you get hundreds and hundreds of sheets. You're going to have more than that, hundreds of views. So we want to break it out into smaller pieces. Next. And the first thing is the workflow. And the workflow is very simple. And it is a mandatory thing. And again, if we're doing it with integrity and everybody on the project agrees, then that's what they should be doing. Create your view, rename or name the view, and then change whatever parameters you need. Then get to work. In the handout that you can download off the blog, there are very specific naming conventions. All capitals go onto sheets. Modified sentence case doesn't. Those kind of things need to be followed. And these rules, like, would you like to name corresponding views? At least in architecture and in many workflows, this is a yes every single time. Why do I say every single time? Because I've seen projects where people say no to that, and then those views get lost, and it's just a nightmare. We don't want nightmares. Let's just not keep nightmares. Let's keep away from them, right? So we like to always say yes. The whole all caps thing is because like my construction plan wants to have the letter C. I don't need the rest of the word. I don't need construction. C is construction, yeah? FN is furniture. FP is finished plan. I don't need to have those words, because what I want is I want the project browser to be as small as possible. with the title on sheet parameter being filled in, then I can get the big expressive title on the sheet. So these are parameters that are sitting there embedded, and if we are not using them, it's just, you know, it's kind of shame on us. And we're just making more work for us and less efficiency. So here's how I do it. In a minute, we're going to also show and talk about something that's new to Revit architecture in 2013, which are view types. I say it's new to Revit architecture because in the past, those structural engineers had it, because they had to make up a lot of different view type, plan view types, so they had the ability to duplicate those. We didn't. So the developers have actually given the gift of all of the tools to all of the different disciplines, so now we have that. So in this scenario, what we've created are two special parameters called heading 1, heading 2. I've seen them in all different forms where they have fun names and this and that. I like to call them heading 1, heading 2 because everybody pretty much knows heading 1 is the top level and heading 2 is below that, wherever those exist. So it's pretty straightforward to use that in my mind. They can be called whatever. But you see what happens is they are being organized by their heading 1, then their heading 2, then their view type. Very simple. And this way you get small little groupings. So if you're using, in this case, user views to modeling, right? We don't annotate there. Actually, the only annotation I'll put are notes to myself, what I may need to do, or what I want to check. But those views never go onto sheets. So it gives me the ability to have hundreds, if not thousands of views, but I'm only seeing a very limited amount what I need to work with right now. And that's one of the big keys with these browser organizations. So these are the list, and is this the entire list? No, absolutely not. There's going to be more for different kinds of projects. They're going to be totally different. This is for basic architectural projects, you know, a lot of commercial stuff that we do. So these are what we normally use. The zeros are the system views. The ones are the presentations, et cetera, as you can see. And even though they don't completely relate to the sheet setup, it's the same type of philosophy. So in a normal architectural practice, that whether they use the national BIM standards or national CAD standards, which at that point for the sheet naming and numbering, it's relatively the same, or using a variation of that, this follows the same kind of logic system. So heading 1 gives us the big groups, heading 2 gives us smaller, and these keep going. There's a bigger list, but these are some of the things that you want to do. I do specify differences between the dependents and the dependent children, quote-unquote, views, right? So when you have dependent views, the dependent parent never goes onto a sheet, the children do. They want to be set up different, they want to be organized differently. So that's what this is all about. And this is kind of what one of those groups look like. You see when I'm working, they're in this template, there are hundreds of views, but we only see a couple handful, which is awesome to be working in. So if I'm working in plans, I don't have to have all the other stuff up. So you see over here, this is showing the new view types that we have in Revit architecture, where we can have whatever kinds of different view types we want. In this example, I can use the core and shell and the interiors. So if I was an interiors person and I never needed to work on the core and shell, I would have those views closed. I have a little small list. That's all I work with. That's all I have to worry about. It also helps limit people from making mistakes, stepping on each other's toes. So, and really, these views, what they're about, in the documentation, it talks about this as well. These all capitals views, they're going on the sheets. As a rule, you know, we always break rules. But as a rule, no modeling done in any of those views. Only annotation. You dimension, you annotate, you tag, all of that stuff, you get out of those views. Your modeling is done in your user views, and that's how the workflow is. This way, nobody's turning things on and off improperly in these views that go onto sheets. The last thing we want to do the day we print is to have to reapply or change view templates because people are putting it up. Now, view templates are now can now be automatically associated. Some people like that, some people don't. Some cases, it's really good to have the view templates hard-coded to the view and have it update all the time. Sometimes it's not. So in order to still, kind of keep a consistent workflow and to keep everything on the rails, as I like to say, on the tracks, we do like to have these organizations. So, slide. And really, again, why is organization important? Well, it's why is, working with integrity important? Why is actually being mindful of what the MEP engineer is doing and what the structural engineer is doing, and then being mindful of what we're doing? Well, because success is important. How many people have had a project where let's say you're an MEP engineer, and you get the new architectural model, and all your ceiling-mounted lights disappear? Anybody ever heard about that, Troy? Like, lately? Lately? Right? How many architects do we have here? Okay, engineers? A couple engineers? How would you classify yourself? None of the above. Well, in a project workflow, if I want to, try to build as much success in as possible, because I want to look like that kid, man. I want to just be, does that not look like an awesome feeling? Yeah? I want that feeling. I want everybody to have that feeling. I don't want to have that feeling when I send my model to somebody. They say, why did you delete that wall? You should have just moved it. Now all of my outlets and annotations and dimensions disappear. Thank you for making me do 3 more or 8 more or whatever more hours worth of work. These are the things that we get when we don't communicate and we don't, excuse me, Cameron, when we don't work with other people in mind. So one of the things that we do, by the way, if you will, you can pass this around and somebody take it, steal it if you want. Don't steal it. But these are all of the settings possible in Revit. Yes, I have captured every single setting. On paper, in Revit, it's now in Microsoft Word. These are fully editable. I didn't print it in color, but every one of the object styles is in color, with the color. Yes? Yes, everything. We talk about model management. Let's talk about model management. If you use linked views, right? There's a worksheet for your linked views. For the architect, for the engineer, for the MEP engineer. You fill out for your plan, your section, your elevation. What else? What else do I have in here? I should know that. I always forget RCP for some reason. Your plan, RCP, sections, and elevations. All of the object styles. So as an architect, I would do this for structural and MEP, and they would likewise do the same for the other two, or however many consultants are on the project. And I'm going to fill out basically how this is set up is all you have to do is just highlight what you want off. If you want it on, leave it blank. I know that seems backwards, but I like to break the rules sometimes. So you make a rule, you break it. So you go through, you fill these out. Now, Marcello Scamboluri, who's not here, who if anybody has seen any of the extraordinary modeling stuff that he's done, or if you haven't, you need to. So on our blog, there's all, just go over and search for Simply Complex or Revit Complex on the Google machine, and you will find Marcello's blog. You can go to the LA Revit Users Group blog and find his stuff. He's the guy that modeled the cow that the Autodesk factory took to make the wall-by-face tool work with highly organic geometry. Previous to him doing that, as soon as he modeled that tool didn't work. They asked him if they could borrow it. They made that tool work with a cow. So, which kind of gets to when somebody says you can't do something in Revit. I have something and it sounds really egotistical. I mean, I can be very egotistical. I think I'm awesome. I think all these guys are awesome. But, I keep it in check. But I say something that really comes off and it makes me shudder. But what I say is, if I don't tell you, if somebody tells you that Revit can't do something, and that person isn't me, there's one of two things happening. They don't know how to do it, so therefore their expectation is it's impossible. or they're looking at you and lying. And I'm still waiting to be proven wrong. I mean, this is, yes, I get it. It won't wash my car. I'm talking about in relation to an AEC BIM project. Revit can do anything we need it to do. Oh, it doesn't do it like this. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people say, I can't scale a family. Yeah, well, there's a way. If you were watching live or were in LA last night, you would have seen Marcelo showing how to scale a family, build a family that scales. Normally, families don't scale. Other things, you know, you can't do this or that in Revit. You can't make wonderful, complex geometry. Just not true on down the line. So, and, you know, and the consultants that work in Revit all the time and help people out, you probably hear this all the time. Oh, we can't do that. That's right, you can't do that. We can help you do, you know, there are people out there. Okay, so that's kind of one of the things. But what this paperwork allows me to do, and what the BIM execution plans allow me to do and allow us to do, is to have all these very conversations about minutia, but it makes us think about what the other's doing. You know, we have the talk. Hey, we're 40% through CDs. No more deleting, unless there's a discussion with the entire team, because we need to know what those ramifications are. You know, if an architect deletes a wall, what is that going to do to the structural? What is that going to do to the MEP? Is there a way to move the wall instead? Sometimes it's appropriate to delete it. It happens. But if we delete it, again, without communicating to them first, we're now introducing a lot more work for them. They're going to charge us for extra services. We don't really like that. Now we're in an adversarial situation as opposed to, hey, we worked this out beforehand. We're not adversaries at this. We understand these changes are coming. So the more we can set up, right, like the project browser is a very simple setup in a file to do certain tasks. It gets a certain bit of that success, but it reaches to everything, and it's having that integrity that's really important that points to the success. So that's why organization is important. I mean, if you ever tried to find a sock in a pile of, you know, sand, good luck. Next slide, if there isn't. There we go. So at this point, are there any questions? Oh, I'm going to run away and go have a beer. No questions? Yes, I see a question.
After you apply the guidelines that you use, how do you measure the amount of time saved or competitiveness your firm has with another firm doing similar projects? Do you have a way to do that yet? Or?
So the question was, you know, on these projects where, you know, workflows, efficiency workflows are integrated, and tell me if I paraphrase the question wrong, where these efficiency workflows are brought in, are there any metrics? Are there any ways to measure the success rate compared to other people that may not be using them? There's no real metrics. I haven't found any other architects that will share their metrics, so I know what we do, kind of. And what we do is we look at the, really, what I do as the BIM manager. I'm not, you know, directly managing the project architects, you know, the project managers. I'm making sure the workflow is working. What I have found as a generalization, I have worked on teams that were able to be very efficient, and there was noticeable shrinkage of project time. I've been able, I did a project a while back, and we did 2 university buildings, and this was a 5-week project to get 100% DD from a printed bridging documents. Here, can you do this in 5 weeks? Yes, we can. I had an amazing team. We were very focused. There was a plan of action. There was a, you know, what we were going to do, when we were going to do it. Designer had no more time. There was a cutoff time, and there was pencils down, out. No, you can have whatever idea you want. That is getting nowhere near this because we need a certain amount of time. So it can happen that you could constrict, you know, your project schedules. Is that typical? Not usually. Why? I don't know. Don't take offense. I've been an architecture since 1982. So I have gone through design and everything and detailing. This may sound harsh, but you know, architects are a flighty crew at times. Not always decisive, not always wanting to stop. Just stop. Just be okay with what you've got. So what I find with these systems that create inherent efficiency is we may still take 10 minutes too long, right? Whatever the project deadline is. But in that time, we're able to do better work. We're able to sit there and do that, you know, architecture kind of work, rather than just producing and producing and producing. Oh, wow, we moved that wall. Now we have to go chase it through the sections and elevations. You know, those kind of things. But again, especially on the first few projects, these efficiency systems, it's not bulletproof. The first time a person goes to a browser organization like this, they're not using the right naming convention. They're spelling things all different kinds of ways. They're putting the wrong things on sheets. So there's actually sometimes other work that needs to be done until the team really adopts taking ownership and pride in their work and really adopting these systems. It really comes down to not just the system and the plan, it's the follow-through that needs to, and then once that happens, then you can, you know, either be doing better work in that time or actually constrict the schedule. But compared to other people,
what we've seen is that is
Joe Mendez?
yes.
Please, come on up.
What we've seen is reduction.
Oh, no, wait, Joe, we need you up here.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, said we weren't going to introduce him, but he didn't want to come up, so now he comes up. Joe Mendez.
Very short, so you stay over here. What we've seen is to follow up with what Jay was talking about, is a reduction of team because of the production being more efficient. So really, we're not saving time, at least for projects we do. We do primarily international stuff, and our stuff is massive as far as size, but yeah, they're shell and core projects, but we're talking millions and millions of square feet. And production is always being demanded very rapid turnaround. But what we've seen after putting efficient workflows, as Jay was saying, is really not finishing the project ahead of time, but what we've seen is we finish it more efficiently with less members. Yes. So really, that's what we're looking at, is not making stuff faster. And that's one of the first things I tell my teams when I'm teaching them is you're not going to get faster, really. You're just going to get more efficient and accurate in the process. And then to the PMs, they're asking, well, how am I saving anything? Oh, well, you're saving efficient. Ultimately, is the amount of man hours you're going to put in that project.
Yeah, if you cut the project down by half the amount of people, even though it takes the same amount of time, that's half the amount. Brian, you had a comment? Brian Andreessen?
Yeah,
The world.
Yes. One other thing I was going to say was, when we were talking about that, was that what I've experienced is that people will, you get a group of users together on a project, and whether or not we give them, like you said, whether it's a 6-week deadline, a 12-week deadline, they will use up every single minute of that time. It'll get done, but whether or not they're pros or beginners, for some reason, maybe it's just our office, but it gets done, but it's literally, you're pulling hair and you're dragging people right to the very last thing. And I think it might be a thing to have to do with architecture and architects. And these guys that want to literally design to the very last minute and make it as perfect as they possibly can. And so I used to have this concept that I would rush to try to make it, done ahead of time or early, so that I could go to the principals and say, hey, look, I did a good job. I saved this many weeks. And it never happens. But all I've learned is that it helps out to allow them more design process.
Awesome. And another thing kind of toward that point is the final point that I'll bring up has to do, I think, directly to that. And it's a conversation that started the other day, and work it into, who knows, papers and presentations full blown. But the basic concept is management. Project management is the key. If you have a good project manager that actually manages the project and says, we're going to do these things at these times, and then actually tracks that and keeps the team inspired and focused, then we can be both efficient and possibly shorter on the time frame. If we have a project manager that says, well, you knew when the DD deadline is, why didn't you finish it? That is not a good manager. That is a horrific manager that doesn't know what they're doing, in my opinion. A manager needs to manage day to day and track everything all the time. So the concept that I'm talking about is we're in a team sport. We are here in architecture. Unfortunately, a lot of people in this industry, in AECO, the AECO industry, plays like they're individuals. And until we embrace the team sport mentality, it's just going to be, if we have a successful project, it's a goof. It's luck, frankly. How all that stuff gets pulled together. That's why people are waving their arms still out in the field when we should be waving them at models. So on a sports team, let's take the NHL. There are players that range from, Sunday night corner league guys that are, 20 pounds too heavy and super slow. It's fun, but we're nowhere near, NHL stars. And it goes all the way up through the ranks to NHL stars. Well, how do those NHL stars stay on top, get on top, and then stay on top? Well, they work hard, right? It'd be awesome if it wasn't so loud. The NHL stars work really hard, yeah? And we've all heard, oh, there was a goal scored, and the ref made a bad call. Now, what happens too often in architecture is there's a bad call, and we point our fingers and we play the blame game, and it's always somebody else. And if anybody blames somebody else for any issue, they're making a terrible mistake. Because the NHL player, the great ones, and by the way, the worst of the NHL players are still pretty great, right? So the great ones, what they do is they say, wow, they may be upset in the moment, and it may last a couple hours and the ref and whatever. But no, what they do is they go back and they think about, well, you know what, if I would have scored another goal earlier, that wouldn't have mattered. And they take it upon themselves as a personal challenge. Because if you're blaming somebody else, you are not doing any bit good for yourself in the moment or in the future. You are just actually putting in an excuse and hate into yourself and thinking that's the way to be. And then the next project, you're going to have more excuses and more hate. And that is not going to make you a better team player. What will make us better team players, whether or not it's our fault at the bottom line, right? Doesn't matter. That we can have a talk about 5:30 on Friday. We'll have a beer. We'll talk about whose fault it is. But if I look inward and say, you know what, I'm going to what can I do better next time? What can I talk with my structural engineer about earlier next time, or the MEP? What could he or she have talked to me about so I don't delete the walls and blow up their documentation? Instead of pointing the finger and saying, you did this and it made us have all this extra work. Well, okay, next time, mention that. And I won't do it, right? So what can we do in the moment? So that kind of philosophy, if we start to really get toward that, and who knows if you have a baseball or football or hockey or whatever team, and the team is on paper, the players are awesome, and they don't make the playoffs, who gets fired? Who gets blamed? Not every one of the players. We fire junior architects because they were late on a deadline. That is the most silly thing in the world. I mean, it happens. Sometimes there are people that just don't care about their job. But more often than not, it is poor management. Yes, the coach gets fired. But the coach is doing a good job. It's the general manager that gets fired. The owner isn't the person getting fired, generally. They might sell after a while. So we have to really embrace that kind of philosophy, because that's what we're here doing. We are in a huge team sport, and we all have to work within it. So with that, I thank you very much for your time. One more thing.
Trainers. You left out the trainers.
I left out the. Oh, that's right. Troy, come on up here. So we were talking about this. I was having this conversation with Marcella, who's not here today, the other night, and then I was talking with Troy last night about it. I was going over it, saying, "Oh, should I read? Should I go over this thing? It's it's not really worked out yet." But and we were talking, and Troy actually had something very interesting to add to it. So Troy Gates. So when we were talking about it, I was thinking he was talking about architects, clients, owners, consultants, but he was leaving out a very important piece of that team. When you think about a hockey team, a basketball team, a football team, who keeps those players running? Who keeps those players out on the field? It's the trainers, right? You have your doctors and the guy sitting there just taping up their ankles or whatever. Well, that's your BIM manager. Your BIM manager is just as important on a BIM project as the actual players that are in that BIM project. Without that person there, you're not holding the project together. You're not getting those people to perform at their highest. So you got to bring that trainer into it and make sure that they're really an integral part of it. You can't just have, all right, we'll somebody will figure it out and they'll be our BIM manager. No, you need that trainer. You need somebody that knows what they're doing and can keep those players out on the field. So, yeah, you're a trainer. You got those rolls of tape. You tape up architects' ankles all the time, and that's really what it is, right? What does that trainer do? Tapes up those architects' ankles, gives them the efficiency, gives them the tools, gives them the workflows, gives them the documentation, gives them the templates, gives them the families, shows them how to do things, shows them how to be better, fixes the model, shows them how, pounds on that. No warnings, no warnings, no warning. All of these things. It's a very interesting point, and that is a great part of it. Yes, another question.
Well, if you have a team of people, and you have people of different abilities, right, working on a Revit project, how do you account for the learning curve and mistakes of people that don't have as much experience with the program, but they are going to make mistakes as they learn? And how do you have that multiplied with energy, generally?
Yeah. So the question is, how do we deal with multi-layered experience levels of the team players? Very basic users to experienced users. I like personally, if we can, to mix the two. And as the BIM manager on a project, whether I am the person or there's somebody else that's the BIM manager on a project, I want that person to check in with those people at least twice in the morning, twice in the afternoon, if not more, physically. Hey, what are you doing? What you doing now? I've walked into projects, I've managed projects, 22 users in one city, 3 in another city, 2 in another city. Yeah, all same project. And a new intern was brought in. They were tasked with doing furniture layouts. I go there about an hour and a half into her workday, and it's just all, she did one level. It was these two, 20 or so story, 13 story, 2 500-key hotel buildings, and had only done about 2/3 of one of the floors, but did 2/3 of one floor of furniture, but they were all in place families. Because somebody had, that's her level of expertise, and very new to the software. And so it was, I came in, it was like, oh, okay, and they're all one family. All these, well, we just needed to look and plan, but I wanted a 3D, so we have these blobs, round. So that's great. Okay, now here's what we're going to have to do. So we sat down for a half an hour, showed her how to construct a family. She had to make about 8 or 10 different families that we're able to change real quick. We had some others in the library she was able to use. So actually had to take all that, delete it, step back, and then redo that work. So yeah, it wasn't an hour and a half because you got to double that, right? The hour and a half to do it, but the hour and a half to change it. It was about an hour to redo it. But these projects aren't, if we had a 1 hour make profit, not make profit, we were in a bad way anyways. So that 1.5 hours, yeah, it was unfortunate, not a big deal in the overall scope of everything, So it's really all about communication, management. So it's a BIM manager, we have to be checking in the model. And it's not sitting back in our office being that evil person, although I love doing that. Being that evil person in the dark room, looking at the model under the hood. No, it's doing that, and it's also going out and talking to the team. And knowing, having that plan, that management plan. I know what my teams are doing every day, because we check in every day. We have the BIM meeting for the project, separate from all the other meetings, every week. So we know what everybody's doing. And then it's just checking in at that task kind of level, making sure they're doing it right. Give them a quick half an hour, hour, 2-hour modular training. Oh, you're going to be doing this next week. Let's sit down at lunch, give you what you need to go over, have your lunch while we're doing it, and then next week, awesome. So that's one of the ways that I do it.
I've helped a lot of firms implement BIM, and a lot of companies do it differently. There's really, I mean, you can take all that and wrap it up, but companies are still doing it. You know, some will do one way, some will do another way. It has a lot to do with how your management is supporting you. You know, how are they going to allow you to spend time and money to get those people levels up? You know, some like to send them to resellers to get training. You know, some like to do the training in-house. The just-in-time training is probably one of the best methods you could use, where you train them as they're working on that part of the model. So there's a lot of ways to do it. It's really finding out how your management, how your company culture will embrace it, and even the people that are on the team. Those are the people that you really have to figure out too, and that's probably the hardest part. You know, what are their learning capabilities? Some give me a book and I'll figure it out on my own. Others I've already figured out because I've been out on YouTube and the way I'm looking at it. You know, you'll get somebody that just doesn't want to learn, and you have to really force them. So it's always different, but it's just getting the plan and figuring it out for yourself, but getting that plan and just sticking to it for your company and driving those people. And after a few projects, you'll just find that those people's levels will just continue to rise, and then you can kind of just stand back and just let them go because they're going to do it on their own after a while.
And again, it's like the sports team. What is the manager's role? Get the team to gel. Get the team to work together. The manager, their job is to know who they have on their team, know what that person needs in order to be successful, provide as much of that basis for success as possible, and then if that person is not successful, it's either just a pure mistake, you know, means mistakes, which happen, or it's just that person is now not putting the proper input in. You know, so it's knowing who you have on the team, and that's when you can trade them for them. And sometimes you have to trade them. So, yeah. Is that it? Great, thank you very much. Now, next we're going to have Troy Gates, so it's actually good that he's standing up here, and he's going to
switch up the slides.
Okay, so he's going to switch a slide. So everybody out there on the interweb, I guess you can do what you need for about 30 seconds or so, and then Troy will be back.
Yes, I am. Okay. Yeah. So Jay had a very good discussion type presentation. Mine's on schedules, and really to get schedules, you really need to see in Revit live action. So I'm not going to be up here much. I'm going to be sitting behind the computer, so you're going to see more of my screen than more of me, which is probably a good thing. But I'm the design technologies manager for Mazzetti, Nash, Lipsky, Birch, long name, call it MLB. We're an MEP firm. We do a lot of Revit, so we're progressing very strong in Revit. And so we use schedules a lot as MEP. We use a lot of schedules. So one of the things that I've found over my career in Revit and in BIM itself is people accept out-of-the-box schedules, pick the category, click a few parameters, it goes on there, great, I put it on a sheet. There's so much more that we can do to make your schedules look better, give you more information, and actually pull that eye out of BIM and give you information in your model so that you can do better projects, be better informed about the project. So I kind of came up with a phrase of beyond creation, because it really is, I don't care about creating it, what can I do with it after I have it created? So that's kind of what I'm going to go through. So switch slide real quick.
Ready for your slide change?
I have one slide besides that one. So here's what I'm going to cover. I'm going to go through some appearance tricks that I've come across that really aren't something that is just very apparent to you when you're using Revit. It's kind of something that you had to figure out along the way. So things like putting symbols in schedules. One of the things that a lot of people have always asked is, can I put symbols in here? Can I put a solid dot and stuff like that? So I'm going to show you how to do that. Put a new line in the header text, just something quick that I've come across that allows you to kind of customize your headers a little bit, make them look a little bit better. And then the same thing with custom titles, how you can get better looking titles on your schedules. And even more, once you see what I'm doing, you'll have probably 1,000 ideas of what you can do to make your schedules look better. View templates, copy and paste. Then I'm going to go through some specific ones: key schedules, conditional formatting, and embedded schedules. These are some areas that will take a normal schedule and push it a lot further than just, like I said, just picking a category and some parameters and accepting that. So I'm just going to kind of run through these. So I'll come back up here after I'm done so you can see my face again, but I'm going to switch to that. Awesome. And hopefully they can hear me. No, they'll be able to hear that. Okay, that's fine. Just project. Okay, they can hear me over the microphone. Great. I'll put it even closer to this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is go through these appearance tricks. And the first one is getting symbols into your schedule. So I have a very simple project here, and I have a bunch of schedules. But what I'm going to do is just create a quick sheet schedule. So I'm actually going to create some sheets here real quick. And I don't really care what they are, so just so I can create a quick schedule out of it. So new schedule, everybody knows how to do this. And that's it. Oh well, I'll do it. Sorry. I'm going to create a room schedule and do it in there real quick. Okay, so I'm just going to put in the room number and room name and then add some fake columns here. And I'm just going to add a parameter, and I'm just going to call it a symbol, just so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. The important part is that the parameter needs to be text. I don't really care what I'm putting the parameter under, but you can choose any of the regular fields. And so I've got a nice little schedule here. So to put symbols into these cells, inside of Windows, there's a built-in tool that's called character maps. And the way to get to it is if you just go in and you start typing in here, you can pull up this program called Character Map. And what it is this tool that gives you every single character that's in that font. And so for my projects in our template, we use Arial as our font, and that's important that you pick the same font in the character map that you have for your fonts in Revit for your schedules. If you pick a different schedule, or if you pick a different font for your schedule text, you need to make sure and choose that in here also. And so if I kind of just click through here a little bit here, you can see there's a whole bunch of different things in here. For instance, there's a whole bunch of objects in here, but there's some specific ones in Arial down towards the bottom that actually give you some symbols that are kind of appropriate for a schedule. And so some of those are like these delta symbols, these solid dots. I don't know if you want to do smiley faces. You can actually put smiley faces in the project. Maybe a heart because you love that room or something. All right. Or maybe it's a music room. Maybe you're doing school, right? So I'm just going to do a delta here. So you click on it, you select that, and it puts it down here in this little box, and then it gives you a copy button. You can say copy that, switch back over to Revit, click in the cell that you want it in. So I'm going to put the music symbol now. So an office. So then, using the keyboard shortcut in Windows, Control-V, will paste that in. So I hold down Control, click on V, and you can see it paste that into my schedule there, and then I can hit Enter, and now I have a symbol in my schedule. So if you can imagine having a sheet schedule with several columns for your revisions, right? You could actually go in and put a solid dot or one of these deltas next to the sheets that are from revision 1. And then you can create a nice schedule to put on your sheet, on your title sheet that shows graphically which ones are in which revisions. So just to walk through it again here, I'll just go ahead and click another one. First, I need to delete this one out. Let's do a nice little music symbol here. And again, you just click select, and then copy. Then I can come back in here and Control V, and hit enter, and there it is. And just so you can kind of see it on a sheet, I'm going to come down here and just open up a sheet real quick, and drag that on. And if I zoom in on that, you can see that it's placing those symbols in there. So it's a quick little trick to get symbols into there.
So if you've added it on there, can you just copy that one and keep pasting it in the other?
So the question is once I get one in there, can I just keep copying and pasting? Yeah, you can. So it stays on the clipboard until you copy something else. So like that music symbol is still on there, so I can just keep clicking in here and keep just Control V, and that will keep pasting it in. Or I can come in here and highlight this one again. You can't right-click like in Word and get the copy on the right-click menu, but Control-C is for copy. So you can do Control-C, and then again, Control-V will paste it. Okay. Another question.
Yeah, this is fine for ASCII text, but what if you want to put in an actual bitmap graphic symbol?
Okay. So if the question is what if you want an actual symbol, say from a family or something like that? So that's not possible in the schedule itself. But when I get to the custom title, I'll show you that you can actually put symbols in. They're not part of the schedule, but you can kind of fake it in so it looks like it's part of the schedule. And so I'll show you that. Okay. So these are the symbols. The next one that I was going to do was actually just adding another row or a new line to the header text. And this one actually, I'm actually going through it live last night. I found out there's a little bit of a glitch in it that if you try and edit in a wrong way, it actually won't let you do it. So if I don't get it right the first time, I'll definitely get it right the second time. So what I'm talking about is when, so for instance, I have main here. Well, what if I wanted to put another word right below it? Maybe I want to put like ABV for an abbreviation or something like that. Well, if I just click in here and type ABV, you can see it's not putting it on another row. What I would have to do is actually come in here and squeeze this until, oh, it's not doing it right. So what you can do is, and this is where I glitched it last time, so it might not work on this cell. I might have to go to another one. But is if you click after it and you hold down Shift and Enter, it will actually give you a new line. So the key is to hold down Shift and then hit Enter. If I just hit Enter in there, it finishes the cell and deselects it. But Shift Enter puts in a new line in there. And so now if I type something, and this is where I think it's not going to work, yeah, so it's glitched. If I come over to this one and do it, so Shift Enter and the new, and of course it's glitched again. So let me just switch to a different schedule and show you. And I think that has to do with the way that that Revit recognizes that you're in a cell. So I'm just going to come down here to one of mine. So for instance, this one right here, if I go in here and hit Shift Enter, and I'm going to lie to you and show that I can do it in any of them. But it is possible because I do have one in here that's doing it. Let's see, it's in here. Okay, so this one right here, the CFM would actually be going across the top, but because I did Shift Enter, it worked. I believe I did it one of these the other night. No. So I'm going to lie to you and not be able to show it live, but it does work because this one is doing that. Okay, and I believe it's the way that you click into the cell from Revit that it doesn't always do it.
Can you see on the sheet if you look at the sheet?
It might show it on the sheet. So let me just drag it onto the sheet and see if it shows it here. Yeah, so it is showing it on the sheet. Okay, so it might not show it in there. It should. I do get that to work, but for some reason it's not showing. Maybe if I go back to it, it'll go, you know.
In the schedule piece, it's not showing, it's not a double line. You gotta get a line on the side, it actually shouldn't.
Well, it should be because, well, these ones maybe not, but these ones it should be. So maybe if I did it in here, I believe that's what I did last night. So if I do it here, it does show up, that's right. So because this isn't a double line yet, it's doing it that way. Right. So good call. So as you can see on this one, I did do the shift enter. Before the cell was wide enough so it was one piece, but as soon as I did shift enter behind there, you can see that the other piece of text moved down. So if you need to do the double row, what you'll need to do is another thing that that Revit has available is you can select two cells and you can group them and it will put an empty cell above it. That then you can put more text in, but that will also make this a double row. Okay. So that was the other trick. And so the next one that I'm going to show, I'll make sure I get them in order, is custom titles. So custom titles, all it really is let me jump back to my sheet here, since I already have a schedule on here, is taking and putting my own title on here. By default, what Revit does is, let me show you what Revit does by default, is when you go to the appearance properties and you have the title on, it just throws whatever the title is up there. You can change that, you can type over it just like you can type over the header rows, but it's always centered. You can only control a few properties of it. You can't change the line weight for the header box or anything like that. It's pretty limited to what you can do. So if I come in here and look at the appearance, all I can do to the title is either underline it or show a blank row between it and the data. That's really all you can do. And I don't even believe you can have a different title size than the headers. It all groups it all together. So to get around that, get rid of the title. I think it looks best if you get rid of the blank row before the data. And so what I do is, once it's on the sheet, I use line work and text to create what I want it to look like. So I would just come in here, draw my line work, create a box, do it, and I already have it in this case. What I do is after I have it all, I put it into a group so that I can just take that group and I name it the same as the schedule. Then I can just drag it over into the view. It even grab the corner of the schedule, and now you can see it automatically allows me to put that in there. So this group now, if I edit that, you can see it's a piece of text. Whatever I want that text to be. I can make it an inch tall. I can make it however I want, whatever font I want. Okay, whatever I can do with text. I could put a symbol back here that's an actual family if I wanted. So for instance, if this is a keynote schedule and I want to denote that there's a circle, then that's what the keynote symbol looks like. I could put it right here in this group, and that would be in part of the schedule. And so once I have all this, I just select it all, use the add to a group, and now that it's a group, I go in and put the origin location at the top left endpoint of the schedule, because you can actually snap to that line in that corner on the schedule. So you can see when I brought it in, right? So when I move this and I go from the origin point, I can snap to anywhere on the schedule. Well, maybe not anywhere inside, but on the outside. So you can see I can line it up perfectly. And you can see in here I even have a bolder line than what the schedule. So you can get very creative that way. I've actually done it in other ways too, where this first row right here was not actually part of the schedule. This right here I had moved out like this, and I had line work right here and line work going down that matched the rows of the schedule, and I had family symbols in there. And that's how I had symbols in the schedule. Now, you have to be careful with it. Obviously, you want to make sure that nobody's in here changing the size of your columns of your schedule and everything. So, for instance, in this case, I actually think I might have changed the size now. So it's lining up. But say somebody came in here and said, well, the remarks isn't big enough, I want to stretch this. The group's not going to update with it. So you'll have to go in and edit the group and move that line. Actually, like I said, prefer to use the move tool because I can snap. So, I mean, it's as easy as that, finish, and then that would be updated. Okay? So if you have these in your template, it's as easy as that. Drag your schedule onto your sheet, grab the group, drag that onto your sheet, done. Okay? So Questions on that one? Pretty self-explanatory. And one of the things that I've done is actually named them based on schedule, and then the schedule name. That way it's easy to find them. So the last two kind of tricks here is one that just a lot of people didn't know is that in schedules you can actually use view templates. So once you get the schedule looking how you want as far as the appearance tab goes. So as far as this goes, which as you can see right now, this isn't the default settings. I've changed a few things in here. I don't want to have to do this for every schedule I do. I want to just take this and apply it to every feature schedule. So in the schedules here, at the top of the properties, there's a view template. You just click in there, you can choose your view template. You can edit what the appearance is. So even if you didn't want to follow this one, you can edit it one way, go into each of your schedules, and apply that view template. So a quick way, just like regular views, to get your schedules all to look the same. The last one is copy and paste. Again, it's something that's been in Revit for a very long time, but a lot of people just never noticed it or didn't know about it. And what copy paste is that I can take any schedule, right click on it, copy it to the clipboard, go into another project, paste, and that exact look, parameters, everything goes into that other project. So in this case right here, I have some custom parameters in here. So if I go into fields, pretty much everything with the _L and AQ is a project parameter. If I copy that into a project that doesn't have those project parameters, these will go along with the schedule. So it's also another way to quickly get a whole bunch of project parameters from one project to another. Is put them all in a schedule and then copy and paste it. And it's as easy, like I said, as just copying it. So right click, copy to clipboard, and I'll actually paste it into this other project I have open here. Unfortunately, I don't think you can do it while you're in a schedule. I think you have to actually be in some kind of view. But when you're in here, just do Control-V. You can see it's the ones that it always brings in that it copies over. But now, if I scroll down here, I have that exact same schedule. All those same project parameters are now in this other project. Okay? And then if I wanted the groups, I could do the same thing. Just save that group out, import it in, and now my custom header is in there also. All right, so that's kind of the appearance tricks that I came up with to show. So now I'm going to move into these other three, which is key schedules, conditional formatting, and embedded schedules. I know our time is shortened up, so I'm going to go through conditional formatting very quickly just to kind of show you what you can do and let you guys run wild with ideas. Kind of the same with embedded schedules, but I really wanted to spend a little bit of time on key schedules. So key schedules, I'm actually just going to undo this and get rid of that one. Key schedules are a special kind of schedule that is kind of a free-form schedule that the data you put in it isn't applied to objects, not until you associate that data to an object. And so it allows you to go in and pretty much type in all the data only in the schedule, and then take that schedule and link it to another schedule of the same category. So in this case, I'm going to get rid of the properties here so you can see this list. This is an example project that I did, and I went in and created a bunch of schedules for plumbing fixtures based on load factor. And pretty much what these are is they're based out of the code book. So I took the code book, and if I go into this one, you can see word by word I put in the load factors from the CDC code book. Okay, so the group type, the actual group name, what the load factor was per person, and then what the actual usability notes are. And we actually added the usability notes because not in the CDC is so important, but when you get into things like the laboratories here, you actually have some usability notes that says after so many people in there, you start doing certain things. So in this case, after 401 people in an assembly, actually females, after 401 females in an assembly area, you have to start figuring it out on your own, which is one for each water closet up to 4, and then after that traditional. So I put the notes in there so that people could go in and actually figure it out on their own if they don't meet the requirements. But all of this text and all of these parameters aren't linked to anything. They're just free form. So how do you create a key schedule and start working on this? So you go in and do a new schedule. In this case, these are based on rooms because we're basing it off of occupancy. And occupancy is based on rooms. So I did a room schedule, so I'll come in here and just go down to rooms. And instead of doing a regular schedule, there's a little toggle here that allows you to switch it to a schedule key. And that's the important part in this, is that you're going to switch it to a schedule key. And then you need to give it a key name. And in this case, I just left it as what it was. Actually, in this one, I called it lab email, I believe. I can look at it in the properties. But you need a unique key names for each key schedule. And I'll show you how that links it back to a regular schedule. And then once you do that, you have some of your parameters already for your room, but not all of them. You can see it's kind of limited about what it does. But in here, you would add your own parameters. And you keep adding parameters for the fields that you want to use later in another schedule. And I'll show you how this links up. So I'm just going to cancel this one and show you in this one. So if I come into the properties of this and look at it, okay, so here's the key. You can see I called it CDC Lab Email Key because that's the unique name. And so I go in to edit this, and I have key name, which is what links to this. And then I added my own in here. And all these are, if I go in here and look at modifying them or editing them, okay, there's the name of it. It's grouped under plumbing because when I go to a room, I want it to all be under the plumbing part of it in the properties, like the identity data here. There'll be one called plumbing, and all these parameters will be under each room for plumbing. And then I associated it to rooms because that's the object we're using, right? It's the rooms for this schedule. And then it's text. If you have something like these where it's an actual number, make sure you apply an integer to it so that it's a solid number, because I only want one person. I don't want 1.2 people. Okay? So once I put all of these in, based on what I'm pulling straight out of the code book, then I want to link that to the actual schedule and show you how to use it here. So I have this management schedule here. Let's see right here. So this is just a plain room schedule. It's not a key schedule, it's a room schedule. So I go ahead and look at it, it's just a room schedule. I went through and added all of the parameters that I had in my key schedule. And actually I have multiple key schedules, I'll show you how those are in here. But these are all the parameters. But the one that's important is this one right here that I was just showing you. This CDC WC email key is now available in my room. And now that's how it links the key schedule to the regular schedule. And where that is in this one is this right here, the female type. This right here where it says none is because I haven't selected something from that key schedule. So let me show you how you can kind of see the difference here. See all of these right here, the A1s with numbers, Bs, and all of that? That is this key right here. See all the values? It's now giving them to me in that other schedule. So when I go in here now, I can pick one of those, and I'll show you what it does. So when I pick one, so let's just say it's an auditorium. Oh. First, let me jump to the other. So here's a key schedule for the group type. So this is an auditorium A1. Okay. So that's using this key schedule here. That says if it's A1, it's 30 square feet per person. So now when I pick that, you can see it automatically fills in the 30 square feet. And then I have one here that's using a formula that takes the square footage of the room, which is already built into a room, right? Every room that you place automatically calculates the area. Well, I'm taking that parameter, dividing it by the load factor, and it's automatically telling me how many occupants are available in that room per that's 30 square feet. Then at that point, I can come in, I'm just going to put a 0 here now so I can calculate the total occupants. So it's saying there's 89.9 occupants for there. So now when I pick this, I need to match that number. So 76 to 125 for the code. And if I go over here now, you'll see it automatically calculated that I can have 3 lavatories based on that occupancy. Okay? Does everybody see that? So there are some other things that are going on here, but the important one is this is the key schedule here. and it's using that to fill in this value here, based off of this value. Okay? So if I did the same thing for the male, if I come in and pick the right code for the male, you can see it automatically fills in that one. So it's going out here to this lookup schedule. It's saying, this is the female one, it's saying if it's between 76 and 125, I need 3 ladder codes. Okay? And that's the value that it's putting into here. Everybody good with that? Everybody understand? Okay. So you can obviously see this takes a lot of work to set up, but once it's in your template and once people start using this, it's as easy as saying, I have an office, it's already figuring out the area. So this is a business, I pick on B, I get 200 square foot per person for an office. That means that for this office space, I need 1.1 people, is pretty much the occupancy max. So I would come over here for males and say, all right, it's business, that here, 115. Females is the same or whatever. You can see it just starts filling them in for you. Okay. Then I actually would have a different form that I would use to put it on the sheet. And I would limit it down to just the columns that I want on the sheet. I probably don't need these. And that's why this schedule is called management, because I want to work on it in here, but I may not want to put this one on the sheet. I probably want a different one to put on the sheet. So that's really all key schedules do, is it allows you to create a kind of a lookup table to calculate things or fill in cells for you automatically. So another example I have, I don't actually have it in here, but it's one of the more common ones, is for your hardware type for your doors. You can have a door type key schedule that has all of your hardware in it, that you can go in and say, okay, this is hardware type 1, and it will automatically fill out all the columns in your door schedule for all those hardware types. Or where are all the details? Where's the head detail, the jam detail, all of that? You can go in and say, okay, this is door type A, and it automatically goes out there, and someone already typed in what those detail numbers are, and it will automatically fill it into the schedule. If one of those changes, you only change it in the key schedule, and it will change in every door in your door schedule for that type. So you don't have to make sure you hit every single one. So it's really powerful, and it will really make you speed up and do better things with schedule. Right? So let me speed through doing conditional formatting here. So conditional formatting is something that was available in MEP version of Revit for a while. In either 12 or 13, I think they added it for everybody, all disciplines. And really what it is, if I come in here, just let me put some areas in here. It's already up. So if I add the area here, I'm just going to remove our symbol for now. So let's say I wanted to go in here and highlight all the rooms that don't meet a certain area condition. So I go in here to the Appearance tab, or no, sorry, Formatting tab, and there's a button here for conditional formatting. So if I go in here and click on it, whichever one you have highlighted automatically selects, so it's kind of nice, especially if you have a ton of them, you don't have to click and scroll over here. But so I'm going to do area, and so I want to test less than, let's say less than 200 in here, so that we get a few of 200. And then you want to pick a color. So what color do I want to highlight the cells that don't meet that requirement, or that do meet that requirement? So I'm just going to do red so it shows up nice. And hit OK, and then OK, and you can see every one that's under 200 is automatically colored. So if I need to make sure that, I mean, in this example, it's probably not the best, but if I needed to make sure every room was over 100 square feet or 200 square feet, I know those rooms need to be changed. Okay. The conditional formatting doesn't have a lot of options. As you can see, really for areas, that's really all you have. Between, so you can say between 100 and 200, or not between those numbers, equal to, not equal to, greater than, or less than. So you don't have a lot of them. And as soon as you switch to another thing like name, which is a text value, you can see it's only equal to or not equal to. So show me all the rooms that are equal to office, and it would highlight all those. Okay? Or, you know, show me all the rooms that are equal to a certain room number. So it's not that great for some of them, but for something like area, you can get some, you know, some pretty nice results that you know that it's meeting that condition. One example is if you were to have, say, a column in here based on your expected or programmed area, and this is the what's showing right now. Right here is the actual area. You could do a third parameter that subtracted one from the other, and then you could do a condition on that column, and that would be what you're basing it on. You know, if it's 0, that means I met it. If it's above it, that means I'm better than my program area. That's good. If I'm negative, then I'm not hitting it, right? Okay. So the last one I want to show here, because I'm running out of time, is embedded schedule. So I'll do this one real quick. I actually have them made. Okay? It's Jake's fault. He told me I'm out of time, and I'm blaming him.
I didn't, Elisa.
So moving along. Here is an embedded schedule. What an embedded schedule does is allows you to take a certain kind of schedule. There's only a few that can do rooms, spaces, and a few other ones. That allows you to take one of those and embed another category type within that and have it together in one schedule. In this case, I took rooms and furniture. I named it room furniture just so you can see it. But what it really is I now have this embedded schedule because I'm in a room. I can go in by default, the embedded is unchecked, so I check embedded schedule. I pick the other category that I want included with the rooms. And I'm going to hit cancel real quick because I just undid it. So then I can go to embedded schedule and I just say, give me the type, and I added a counter. So I want to know the type of furniture and how many. And that's all there really is to it. And you can see number and name are the rooms. The count is the furniture type, and the count is below that. So what I'm going to do is just kind of put these side by side with the room and add a few just so you can see that it will quickly here add furniture in there. So if I go in here and add a component, and no, I don't want to save this. I've been working on it for over a half hour. Why didn't you cut me off before I hit a half hour again? Nah! So here's a different kind in this auditorium area. So you can see as soon as I place it, it automatically puts another one in there. It says I have one of them, two of them, etc. Again, this is something that we've used in MVP for a while, and then they added it for everybody. We've always done, all the electrical fixtures, the lighting fixtures, everything that was in a room. Now everybody can say how many columns do I have in a room, how many pieces of furniture, how many plumbing fixtures, anything you want to find in that room or space. Now you can do a schedule for.
But isn't that only if you have one box?
One box so the question is only if you have one box. So in 2013, it's one box which has all disciplines or MVP for 2013. So yeah, one box is where it's at. Okay, so that's your enticement to go buy one box. Okay. So that's it. I'm going to go stand in front of the camera so you can see me while Elisa comes in and starts searching. Go right ahead, Jay. Go talk.
Oh, no, if you have questions, you go there.
Okay. Go talk. You're
Okay. Can you do me a favor? Can you put up the
You can't?
you just gotta keep that? Okay.
Oh, so that's not on right now? But we're on. We're still on?
Yeah.
still on.
Just on.
Like
Okay, so earlier, and actually yesterday, at the introductions, I don't know if you noticed, I had a lot of energy and, at the beginning, and, I kind of get myself all worked up for these things. I try to put as much of myself into them as possible. In fact, watching last night's presentation, I realized that I need to stop moving forward and backward when I'm on camera. Because for you sitting here, it's fine because your perspective is such that it doesn't annoy you. But on camera, it does. At least it annoyed me. So one time during my presentation, I realized, wow, dude, you're moving back and forth too much. Stop. So right now, I just stop. But what I wanted to do is, and this is really not for the betterment of Revit or anything else, but it's really for kind of the consortium to know, and I know some of the consortium right now is watching this and have been really alive on Twitter and helping us out, so thank you very much, Jennifer. And Big Bad Bim, I know I did mention you. I mentioned you earlier, but awesome. Thank you very much for all the support, and everybody else that's tweeting. I haven't gotten a chance to look back, but I'll throw you some digital spitwads later. But what I really wanted to say is, for the consortium and for myself, but it really takes a lot, and we're kind of putting a lot into this, especially these 4 cities in 3 months. It's kind of moderately insane for us to do, and there's a lot of sacrifices that I know we're taking for our family.
Why not as volunteer? Because I can ask if you can take.
Yes, right, and we are all volunteering here, and the resellers who have been awesome to us, Microdesk and US CAD and Kellar Corporation who are here, and just you guys are so awesome for supporting this. Autodesk, for whatever reason, isn't supporting us themselves directly any longer, and these guys have really stepped up and helped. But what I want to say is, to the consortium, thank you very much for all the hard work. And to everybody, to all, the consortium's family and friends and kids, and especially my 2 kids who, who I'm normally with on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, or Wednesdays and Thursdays, whichever. And with this week, I did hang out with them Tuesday night, which was awesome, but wasn't able to be there, and that was really my choice, and it wasn't a choice that they were able to make, because Dad said, well, I have this thing. So I really want to thank them for making a sacrifice to kind of bring the kind of training and hopefully help to the AECO community that we're all really passionate about. And I just kind of wanted, not really so much to lay this on you guys, though you're here, having to see this, but really to thank everybody, my kids, Ram and Noya, and everybody else's families that are, also putting in some sacrifice so we could do this. So really, to you and everybody and all of you that are here, thank you very much. So, Troy, if you have questions.
So thank you for, like Jay said, for attending, listening. Thank you for allowing me to do the schedules part. So I wanted to introduce our next presenter, which is Elisa, and she's going to be doing, what did you call it, management? Project management?
I'll be doing model management and settings.
So there you go.
Hi, my name is Elisa. My name is Elisa de Dios. I am a BIM manager at AC Martin. That's an architectural firm in downtown Los Angeles.
There you go.
As you see up there. I'm also an associate of the firm. I've been there about 5 years now, and we're trying to get Revit going in our office. So today what I want to talk about is model management and settings. It's basically not so much about what the BIM manager needs to do, has to handle on a project, but more so what everyone in a project needs to understand. It may not be something that you do on a daily basis. It may be somebody that the Revit lead, the BIM manager will handle on the project, but you still need to understand and know what it is. So to start off with model management, I'm going to talk about warnings and model cleanup and work shared models in the model management portion. What I'm showing here is strictly PowerPoint, but if you go to the LARUG blog post, you'll see links to a handout which goes in more detail than what I'll be showing here. So if you go to the next slide, to start off with model management, I'm going to start with warnings. Warnings is something that can slow down your project, can corrupt your project, can just cause a lot of issues. And here I have 79 warnings, and if you see the list, all of these are stuff you can fix. None of this should be in there. So to start is you go to the Manage tab and you go to Warnings, and this is what you see. Typically, the BIM manager will go to this window, see what's there. When you select one, you can see the Show button. As soon as you click it, you click Show, and you'll get a window telling you, hey, do you want it, there's no view open, will you open it? And then it'll take you to that view. But you don't always have to go here. The next thing you can do is, when you're in the model, you can select an object, And when you select the object, you'll see that selecting an object will then open up the conceptual tab and you'll be able to see show related warnings. If there is no warning associated with that object, you won't see that button. So if you see that button, then click it. And the warning dialog will open up and it'll just be the warning associated with that. And then you'll see what else is there because you're already in the view. You'll be able to click on either one and see what's the problem. In this case, there's a room separation line that's right on that wall before the wall existed. So we can delete one or the other, obviously, room separation. Next thing with model cleanup is deleting views. There's always unnecessary views. Mostly in my office, we get a lot of sections and 3D views. Everybody needs to have their own little 3D view of that stair. Why? I don't understand. And then there's a lot of section views, which is typically helpful. But you really need to delete a lot of unused views. As you get people coming in and out of a project, they move on and they leave all their working views. So it helps with file size, it helps with file going back and forth and zooming around of cleaning up your views. And one way to do it is if you go and highlight the views, you can change the type to not on sheets. And as soon as you click that, you will see a list of any view that's not on the sheet. Seeing that list, you'll be able to see based on how it's named, based on how it's listed, okay, you know, these views. In my office, we put our name in front of our working view. You know that person isn't working in the file anymore, you can delete it and move on. Another thing I do is I have, well, for example, here you see all the views that we should have here. Going on is, another thing I do is I make a view list. I create a schedule that's a view list of just the sheets that are not, the views that are not on sheets. And what I do is I add family, view name, and sheet number. The reason I add sheet number because that's what I'm going to filter out. So I need to have that parameter in. As soon as I do that, the filter is the sheet number is less than 0.1. In this specific particular project, I do have sheet numbers with 0.1, 0.2, etc. But in most cases, I'll typically put sheet number does not contain A. So I know it's not on my A sheets, or I, it's not on my interior sheets. Once I do that, I get a little picky and I use the family as my header in order to keep the views organized in a certain way where I need to see what family it is, what kind of view it is, 3D view, floor plan, etc. Because once I do that, sorry, that's my little, I like to keep it hidden so I just see the header. Once I see that, I have view names with, for example, I just have my name. I just use Elisa, that's my 3D view. If I don't have a header in there, I'm going to have to go figure out what is that view that just has a first name. You won't know. So with the header, I'll know, okay, that's a 3D view. I can go in there and I can delete those views. The last thing with model cleanup is purging and auditing your file. I always suggest you have to set a schedule of when you're going to do this, because if you don't set a schedule, then it's not going to happen. It needs to happen on a regular basis. In my case, I do it monthly, depending on how many people are on the project. If I have less than 6, and if it's under 200 megabytes. If it's more than that, and I have more than 6 people, then I do it weekly or bi-weekly, because there will be a lot of stuff going on, and you'll have immense problems as people come in and out. The one thing to do when you audit a project is as soon as you open, you'll see this dialog to click on audit. Once you click on that, you get a warning. And that warning automatically tells you, you should do this when you're upgrading or when you're cleaning up. After opening with audit, you go to purge. And then you see here, just by purging, the next thing you see after you let it think is how many items you have to purge out. In this case, I have 234. I usually just say, okay, and move on. There's no real reason to keep anything that isn't being used, because if anything that's standard to the company, it's in my standard library. So I don't need to be afraid of, oh, you know what, I haven't used that tag yet and now I've purged it out. I can always load it again. But to click through all those things and try to look through, oh, maybe I do need that one, maybe I don't, that's just a waste of time. So, When you have a work shared model, you actually have another added feature of once you plot it, once you purge, and when you're going to make the new central, you can compact your central file, and it shrinks it a little more. With that, it says slow, but I've noticed with the type of hardware that we're all using now, it's really not that slow. It's not like, okay, you're going to do that and walk away for an hour, typically. Yes?
Well, it's more of a comment than a question, but it's slow. Well, you could repeat it.
Should I put on the jacket so I don't look like it?
Yes.
Biker days.
Look at those guns. Maybe I should do a push-up once in my life. One of this may be slow kind of thing. How I look at that is I've used Revit for a long time, and it was there a long time ago when computers were changing. You know, if you had a 486, you were pretty happening back in the olden days of Revit. So it was slow to do certain things. Any more now, realistically, not that slow. Right? That's all.
Thank you. So clicking that, it may take 10, 15 minutes, not really an hour, 2 hours, unless your project is really short. Then you have other issues. Next. The next thing with workshop files that I like to keep in order to help in model management is using work sets. I always add a link in its own work set. And one thing I also do is add, in this case, I have a link for interiors and I have a face for interiors because we're working both architecture interiors, and our interiors portion of this project is 2 separate companies. One is in-house, one isn't. So what I do here is I have a work set where the interiors department works on. The way this particular project is, we're not in separate models, we don't need to be. They're working in their own work set, and the rest of us are working in the default work set 1. I always keep it off. And that works in performance with everybody modeling. Interiors is working in their own. We don't have to see it on in our views, and we don't have to constantly be fighting back and forth. In this case, my example here is showing how I can not open a work set. So if I'm working in an area where I really don't need to see the interiors that's linked in, I can just not open it. So when you have the option of not opening certain work sets, you're not loading any of that information. So when you don't load that information, you get a little more RAM in Revit. So you can still work a little faster. So if you don't need to see it, if you're not going to be working in an area having that, then there's no reason to open it. Just if your file is large enough where you're getting a lot of slowdown. Last thing I'm going to talk about is settings. I'm going to go with object styles, line weights, and view templates. Talking about object styles, I'm not going to go into this is how you set up your whole standard, this is the whole list of what Jay showed earlier, what you're going to see. But just with line weights and how you need to understand how you're working with it. With object styles, the one thing, this is default Revit object styles, everything is in projection is typically line weight 1. So graphically, everybody complains that default Revit looks horrible and everything's line weight 1. In my working on our standards, the first thing I do is go to the line weight dialog. And when I open the line weight dialog, this is what I see. I don't change any of the settings. I just want to see what are they and at what scales. If the scales that I use are not in there, I go ahead and add them because I need to see what those line weights are. Once I know that, I go back to my object styles and then I change it to what I need to. I never use anything. For 1, the only reason I use 1 is if I need anything really light, and another reason I don't use 1 is because that's what fill patterns are always set by default to 1. So if you have something that has a fill pattern and you want the border, the outline to stand out, you won't get that if you actually have your category also set to 1. So I always start with 2. And then you see this is, sorry, default compared to our settings compared to the default. So that's the only difference. And this is without messing around with just the default line weight settings. Just see what they are and then I change them up. Next is view templates. The one thing I like about view templates is that it sets up my plot sheets. I have all my views that are going to belong on plot sheets are going to get set up with a view template. Everybody models, you know, as Jay said earlier, everybody models in their working view. You don't model on the view that's going to belong on the plot sheet, other than annotation, dimensioning, that kind of stuff. So by having view template, I lock it down in 2012, I put in, but in 2013, once you set up the view template, you're locking it down. Because once you do that, in the properties of the view, you set the view template. When you go into your view, the person tries to change the detail level, and they can't because it's grayed out because there's already a view template applied. And before that, we always had the issue of somebody set the 1/8 inch scale to 5, and it looks like a blob, and why is it so dark, and why does it not look like this? You know, why is the first floor look different than the second floor? In 2013, you can keep them from doing that now, so that's one thing that's nice. And thank you very much. Any questions? Sorry, I went really fast because some people talk too much.
Okay. Go ahead. No question. I didn't have a question. You just call my name. Oh, you're having it, Brian.
Brian,
You can get off
hello.
the Twitter machine. Thanks. So, Joe, I don't think we need screen switching. So, just are these two? Is Troy and wait before you leave? Is Troy and Troy and what's your name, Brian?
Yeah, everybody's
Everybody's in this. Okay, so come on, just a hash. Come on.
Go on the second.
You'll be in there. Okay, so we can squeeze on in. So that is
There we go.
that is Los Angeles Revit User Group Presents in Orange County. So thank you very much. We got the picture out there. We will take another now. We will be back with you guys in a month, and we will work out an even larger group. So hopefully we can get a lot more what I call digital spitwads. I don't know if you've tweeted all and heard the term tweckle, which is like a heckle on Twitter, which I think that's a silly word, and it sounds like something coming out of the wrong part of your body. So I like digital spitwads. So we'll hopefully get a lot of people, and we can throw digital spitwads at one another. But I hope everything was as awesome as it was for us, for you, and as well on the web. So for everybody, have a good night. Thank you guys.